Sakai is a pathetic Gooner who spends his days imagining his 4 childhood besties as his personal harem. But when these thirsty baddies start having actual feelings for him, he's forced to decide who he will crack for the rest of his life. The day he noticed they were in love, he was having one of his regular dreams as a Giga-Chad, but the loser is soon jolted awake by a freezing wind. It turns out his childhood friend Shio has snuck inside the room through a window he forgot to lock. To escape the death by Snoo, Sakai has to forcefully pinch her mouth shut to snap her out of it. Shio immediately starts cussing him out like he's the one who ruined her life, only to realize she's the one who broke into his room. An annoyed Sakai finally demands that she get out, to which she agrees. As she's halfway out the window, the wind suddenly starts blowing and she ends up flashing him. Sakai's brain glitches for a few seconds, but he eventually points out the wardrobe malfunction, causing both of them to look away in embarrassment. He prepares to head to school, but Shio arrives outside his door, grabs his hand, and rubs it all over her juggernauts. He thinks to himself that Shio should never find out about the absolutely filthy thoughts he has about her, so he'll take that secret to the grave. Meanwhile, Shio is lost in her thoughts too. As it turns out, she has a massive crush on him as well. She's absolutely fuming that all her aggressive twerking and flashing hasn't made him fold yet, but vows to have his sausage one way or another. Shio presses her plot armor firmly against his arm, desperate to trigger a hardware upgrade in his pants, but he ignores her like it's nothing.
Why are you gay?
Desperate for a reaction, she fake trips and drags him down, ensuring he lands directly on top of her and grabs her safety airbags. It turns out to be one of the classic moves she learned from a rom-com manual and pretends to be shocked. She also scolds him for holding onto her like that, but Sakai, who's a PhD in the same rom-com genre, just brushes her off like she's trash and tells her to keep moving. Desperate for attention, she fakes a sprained ankle, but the loser simply pulls out a first aid kit from his bag and starts treating her. He reveals that he's carried one since they were kids because she used to bounce and jump on buildings like a monkey. As they approach the main street still holding hands, Sakai starts worrying about what people will think, but Shio even interlocks their fingers as if they've been married for years and have 5 kids. Just as things get steamy, they run into their other childhood friend, Akari. The two immediately start making the classic, "it's not what it looks like" excuse, while Akari stares at them like she caught her husband cheating. She eventually pretends to be cool and proceeds to walk off, but a panicked Sakai ends up accidentally grabbing her orange farm, earning a smack to the face. Only after Shio clears the misunderstanding, Akari calms down and leaves the two alone. But after she walks a bit further, she breaks down in tears while flipping through childhood photos with Sakai. It turns out she too has a major crush on the loser, and is scared that Shio is making a move on him first. Akari also can't understand why she's always rude to him, despite the excessive desire to love his metal rod with her natural oil. Later at school, Sakai and Akari are back to their usual toxic routine, fighting over their favorite drinks. Shio tries to stop them, but they ignore her until she's called away for class duties. Sakai then remembers how Akari used to follow him like a puppy and thinks about being nice. But the moment she opens her annoying mouth, he changes his mind. Deep down, Akari hates herself for acting like a total jerk around him. She's done everything to get his attention, but somehow the moment she sees him, she starts fighting like there's no tomorrow. Shortly after, as they prepare to chug down their drinks, Sakai realizes they had accidentally switched their bottles earlier. But before he can stop her, she takes a sip, meaning it's an indirect kiss between the two. Akari is thrilled as she slowly processes his saliva in her mouth, and the two start screaming at each other about who has more experience. Sakai claims he's kissed several girls in the past, but the cunning Akari shocks him by daring him to prove it right now.
What do you mean by that?
They then head to a private spot under the stairs, and although Sakai tries his best, he chickens out and finally admits that he's never kissed anyone. Akari is secretly thrilled and tries to claim his first time for herself, but the moment they're about to make contact, Shio arrives there.
No! God, please, no!
Prompting the two to immediately separate. They try to explain they were just discussing his erectile dysfunction problem, but the innocent Shio simply fixes his hair and pretends as if nothing happened. A relieved Akari then tries to leave, only to trip and fall to the ground, flashing her cute teddy bear undies in the process. Later, Sakai's loser friends ask how he's pulling the 2 hottest girls in class and ask for some dating advice. He shouts that they're just his childhood friends and doesn't see them as women, but this is when Shio walks in and hears everything. She forcibly hugs him and presses her airbags against his body, causing all the boys to drip gravy down there. Sakai tries to push her off, but she's so turned on that she decides to take it to the next level. Shio sits on his lap on the pretense of doing homework, but instead starts swerving and jiggling to get a reaction out of his coctopus prime. Everyone in the class is left with their mouths gaping in shock, but she continues rocking her backside like a pole dancer. Just then, Akari arrives and tells them to stop messing around in the middle of the class. Shio still refuses, so Akari takes it as a challenge and decides to join Shio on his lap. The two then engage in a fierce competition, each trying to outgrind each other while the class watches on in horror. Sakai's pole has reached unprecedented levels and is on the verge of piercing bodies, so he shouts at them to stop. The next morning, Sakai is on a crowded bus, still overthinking his messy situationship with his childhood besties. He soon spots a gorgeous girl and thinks to himself that she might be totally out of his league, but when she turns around, she's revealed to be none other than Shio, who's heading to the same bakery as him. The loser tries to act Sigma, but Shio looks so good that his weak heart almost comes out of his chest. The universe then decides to mess with him by sending the bus over a massive bump, launching Shio directly into his arms. He gets absolutely buried in her juicy cocomelons, and she makes the situation worse by hugging him like he just came back from war. She then starts fingering his ear, claiming it will help with his motion sickness. But Sakai knows that his python is the one who's slowly coming to motion. Desperate to hide his condition, Sakai face plants into her shoulder and tries to fake a nap, but his heart is thumping like a drum, prompting him to quickly pulls away. He's shocked to see that Shio looks even more rattled than he is and has tears in her eyes, so he hits the stop button early. Once they're off the bus, Shio panics, thinking he's finally figured out her thirst for him. But the clueless freak hands her a drink, thinking she was actually about to puke from the bus ride. Shio is relieved her secret is safe, but also low-key, insulted by how dumb he is. She then rests her head on his shoulder, hoping they'll eventually stop being so awkward, while Sakai is shaking so hard he spills his drink all over himself. The next day, they're trapped in a classroom because of a massive storm, playing a word game to pass the time. When it's Sakai's turn, he accidentally blurts out Shio's name and starts panicking like a little girl. The jealous Akari then spends the rest of the game trying to bait him into saying her name, but she fails miserably. Meanwhile, Shio also drops Sakai's name but smoothly plays it off as a joke, making Akari even more competitive. Akari gets so obsessed with winning that she slips up and yells out Sakai's name herself. She tries to make an excuse, but Shio points out that she's a copycat and declares her the loser. After she finally accepts defeat, Sakai gets to pick her punishment. But this makes Shio even more jealous as she wishes she could get punished by him instead. Later, the three of them depart home separately, despite only living a few meters away from one another. Sakai is minding his own business when he spots Akari in a bent-over position, trying to fix her dress. She freaks out and ends up tumbling to the ground, revealing her dirty bare undies. Sakai once again gets a 4K view at it, but the furious girl reacts by throwing trash at him like a feral cat. After he runs away, she sulks in the rain like a wet puppy, yet wondering why she's such a disaster around him. Sakai soon comes back with an umbrella to be a nice guy, but she starts roasting him like they're sworn enemies. The freak has had enough and prepares to leave, but she stops him and acts like she's doing him a favor by giving him company. Meanwhile, Shio is just a few meters ahead of them, thinking about how she can convince Sakai to give her his sausage. Just before Sakai and Akari turn the corner and catch her, Shio runs away from there to buy her favorite snacks. Now that they're completely alone in the rain, a weird tension arises between the two. Sakai is busy checking her out and wondering when his cute childhood friend turned into this curvy girl, but Akari catches him staring and slaps him across the face, telling him to stop being a creep. Despite her tough act, she's actually trembling like an old Alzheimer's patient. She soon notices the rain hitting his shoulder and pulls him closer, but keeps on insulting him to keep up her facade. She then gives him her handkerchief, but the idiot misunderstands and ends up wiping her belly instead, prompting her to insult him again. Amidst all of this, their hands touch on the umbrella handle, and they both scream and jump back like they were electrocuted. Akari then takes charge of the umbrella and actually hilds it higher to fit his height, which is way too nice for her. Just then, a car zooms through a puddle and Sakai quickly uses his body to shield her from the dirty water. They end up clutching each other for a solid 10 seconds, during which Sakai's flagpole rises while Akari becomes moist down there. But then she slaps him hard across the face for staring at her wet clothes, confirming Sakai's theory that one can never be in a rom-com with their childhood friend. Back at home, Shio has brought a bunch of snacks, but she craves Sakai's long snack and wants him to join her. She looks out the window to look for him, but he doesn't show up, so she decides to share it with Akari instead. Shio proceeds to sneak into her room through the window as usual, where a completely unaware Akari is talking to a teddy bear while staring at a picture of Sakai and reminiscing about the umbrella incident. Akari screams when she sees Shio watching her like a creep. After a quick scolding for the window break-in, Shio offers snacks to distract from the fact that she just saw Akari's secret shrine. Akari tries to act chill and roasts Sakai to prove she doesn't like him, but Shio isn't buying the act. Akari keeps denying her feelings, even getting fake angry when Shio calls him a nice guy. To change the subject, Akari tries to show her a video, but her search history is full of how to eat your childhood friend's sausage queries. In a total panic, she accidentally clobbers Shio in the head with the phone. While digging for a cold compress, a mountain of Sakai's photos falls out of her closet, and Shio realizes that her best friend is officially her rival. For a few minutes, the two remain completely silent until Akari finally snaps. She admits how frustrating it is that she puts so much effort into looking hot, and Sakai still treats her like a younger sister. Shio agrees, complaining that he got her a trashy plush toy for her birthday, which wasn't even good enough to wipe her toilet. The two then start bonding over what a pathetic loser he is, unaware that Sakai is standing right outside the door. He hears them talking trash and proceeds to leave, convinced they both hate his ugly face. But suddenly he hears a scream and rushes back in, only to find the girls checking the size of their cocomelons. Akari beats him up without any mercy as usual while Shio watches in shock, convinced that Akari must really hate him. The next morning, Shio is glued to some trashy love drama manga about falling for a best friend, while Sakai is passed out behind her like a corpse. After finishing the book, she starts crying and wishing her own life had that much gravy. When she notices Sakai snoring like an old man, she promises to herself that she's going to force a rom-com plot with him. Later on, Sakai is heading to school, stressed because it turns out the girls recently caught him in full otaku mode. He had been out dressed like a total creep, buying his favorite romance manga books when they cornered him. Sakai quickly hid the books inside the shirt, but the persistent girls shook him until he finally dropped the books and almost creamed his pants. Akari was shocked by his weird hobby, but Shio revealed that she already knew about this when she found his secret stash back at the house. The two girls then proceed to roast his soul throughout the entire morning, causing the freak to almost go into a meltdown. In the present, as Sakai is walking to school, Shio sneaks up on him from behind and rubs her orange farm on his back. She then playfully teases him for being a freaky nerd, but Sakai shuts her down and walks away like she just contracted gonorrhea. She tries to approach him several times during the day, but he doesn't say a word and simply ignores her. When Akari learns of this, she advises Shio to stop being a wuss and get bolder. Taking the advice literally, Shio decides to stage a dramatic scene from her favorite rom-com novel. She knows that every day after class, Sakai cleans the gym like a janitor, so she hides inside there waiting for him. But unbeknownst to her, the head teacher calls Sakai and makes him clean the dirty classroom instead. Shio waits for him for several hours, and when he doesn't show up, she ends up falling asleep. When she wakes up in the middle of the night, she finds herself locked in and starts freaking out. She tries calling for help, but her phone's battery has already run out due to watching too much corn. Just when it seems all hope is lost, Sakai kicks the door open like an action hero from the 90s. When Shio asks how he found her, he says he followed the scent of her undies.
What did he say?
And also because they're childhood friends, so he knows everything about her. Upon hearing this, Shio becomes so delighted that her heart almost pops out. Sakai then gets busy texting everyone that she's safe. As it turns out, the entire school was worried for her. But the ungrateful Shio doesn't care about all that. She instead complains why he was ignoring him the entire day. Sakai makes him a bad excuse, but the truth is he was just embarrassed. They found out he is a romance manga nerd. An excited Shio then suddenly tackles him to the ground, desperate to reenact her favorite manga scene. He lays on top of her, and they both make steamy eye contact for a good 10 seconds. Shio then reminds him that they're all alone, and it appears they're finally going to make contact. But out of nowhere, the loser pinches her face and tells her to cut it off. Sakai curses himself internally for missing a prime opportunity to score, and becomes convinced that they are stuck in this friend zone forever. He then looks at Shio and notices she's shaken, but Shio denies it and says she just wants to be near him. The two then sit side by side and start talking romantic stuff, making the loser think their rom-com is finally starting. As if that was not all, Shio gets all shy, leans on his shoulder, and comments how good his sweat smells, causing him to nearly goon in his pants. She then proceeds to confess something when Akari suddenly barges in and destroys the mood by flipping on the lights. She hugs Shio and starts screaming at the punching bag for not updating her earlier. He points out that he actually did text her, but Akari ignores it and demands to know why they were alone in the dark for 20 minutes. Not wanting any part of this anymore, Shio fakes a bathroom emergency and bolts, leaving the two alone. Akari then wastes no time and bluntly asks if he wants to clap Shio, but he insists that they're just friends and nothing more. That night, Sakai tosses and turns while replaying the gym scene like a broken record. He's still cursing himself for not taking the chance to kiss Shio even when she was insisting him to. The next morning, he tries to avoid Shio but gets distracted by how good she looks in her summer uniform. When she catches him peeking awkwardly, he says good morning, like a loser, and diverts the topic. On the walk to school, Sakai continues staring at her juggernauts, which seem to have grown even more. He then tries to bring up the gym incident to calm his nerves, but Shio feels uncomfortable and just runs away after making an excuse. Sakai can't get her out of his mind and starts imagining Shio minus her clothes. He finally snaps out of his weird fantasy when Akari shows up and scolds him for having filthy thoughts. But the creep wonders if she's just jealous, triggering another harem fantasy where he's being worshipped by the two baddies. Later at school, Shio is in the washroom, trying to drown her sorrows after ignoring Sakai for an entire day. Akari sees her in this miserable state and realizes Sakai is the problem. This makes her a bit sad, but she still approaches her and asks what they were doing in the gym last night. On the other hand, Sakai is also in the adjacent bathroom, doing some makeup to calm his nerves. When he hears his name, he sprints over to eavesdrop, only to hear Shio tell Akari that she could never actually be in a rom-com with her childhood friend. Upon hearing this, Sakai is devastated and he scurries away from there to save his miserable face. Shio chases him to explain, but he fakes a smile and tells her that everything's fine. He then runs off with tears in his eyes while Shio feels like garbage, knowing they were finally making progress. The only one who's happy is Akari, as now she finally has the chance to get close to him. That night, she is fresh out of the bath when Sakai accidentally walks in on her, earning him a punch to the face. It turns out the three friends and their families are having dinner to celebrate a random Friday. Later, Sakai finds Akari outside and tries to apologize for seeing her undies for the 10th time. She acts cold as usual, but then abruptly asks if he remembers their childhood promise. He tries to dodge it by teasing her about how she used to be afraid of the dark, but eventually admits he remembers his vow never to leave her. Akari bluntly asks when he is going to marry her, so they can stay together forever. Before he can respond, a drunk Shio interrupts them and starts teasing him for being such a dork. The next day, Sakai is spending his holiday at the park with his favorite boba drink. He seems to be enjoying the moment, but then the nearby kids start bickering, which reminds him of his relationship with his childhood friends. He then starts remembering the moment from last night when Akari abruptly asked him to marry her, which almost gives him a seizure. Just as he is about to lose his mind, a gorgeous girl starts eyeballing him like a juicy steak. Sakai feels slightly uncomfortable, so he gets up and leaves, but the girl starts following him around like an annoying mosquito. All of a sudden, she grabs his face to inspect him, and Sakai starts to think he's seen her somewhere. She becomes excited when she realizes it's him, as it turns out they are childhood friends. Her name is Runako, and she's a year younger than him, who moved away from the city 5 years ago. Later on, they head towards their neighborhood, and Sakai believes the girl is about to head to her old home. But to his utter shock, his mom reveals that Runako is moving in with them and attending his school until the spring break. The loser immediately starts panicking, wondering if he's about to have a roommate session with her. But Runako adorably calls him Big Brother and promises she'll never cause him any trouble. This sends Sakai into a flashback, and he remembers how Runako used to follow him and the other girls when they were kids. She was always clumsy and used to trip over 5 times a day. Later on, while they are unpacking, Runako expresses Sakai how hyped she is to be with him. Sakai tries to act like a responsible big brother, but things get steamy when she trips while carrying a heavy box and lands in his arms. After the move-in is done, Runako wastes no time and bluntly reveals that she likes him. But Sakai, being a total brick, just pats her head and thanks her like she's a puppy. She tries to explain that she really likes him and wants his sausage, but Shio and Akari suddenly arrive and interrupt them. The two girls are thrilled to reunite with their old friend, while Runako starts clocking the size of their massive airbags as if they're rare-type Pokemon. Later on, while Sakai takes a hot shower to control his ding-dong, his mind keeps flooding with thoughts of Runako. He almost goons in the bathtub but controls himself, thinking she's just his cute childhood friend. Runako, on the other hand, is having a conversation with Shio and Akari, and she tells them how beautiful they have become. The girls compliment her back, but then out of nowhere, Runako reveals that she likes Sakai a lot. They laugh it off as brotherly love until she explicitly tells them that she wants to eat his natural sauce. She then runs off to take a shower while the stunned Shio and Akari realize they have a predator in the house. Later on, the cunning little girl heads to Sakai's room, only to find the other two girls already there. It turns out they had already guessed Runako would make the move on him, so they took defensive positions in Sakai's room to make sure he isn't alone with her. Despite the audience, Runako plops onto Sakai's lap and asks him to dry her hair, demanding his full attention. The freak's pistol almost discharges, but before it causes mayhem, the other two girls physically drag her away, claiming Sakai will ruin her hair. They then dry her hair and pin her to the ground to make sure she doesn't pounce again. Sakai is relieved that the girls are acting as human shields, but then Runako starts playing footsies with him under the table. He grabs her leg to stop her, but she just laughs like a psychopath. When Akari finally realizes what's going on, she scolds Sakai, despite him trying to explain that she started it. Shio, meanwhile, is impressed by Runako's aggressive tactics and feels like a loser in comparison. Just as everyone finally seems to settle, Runako jumps near Sakai and requests him for private tutoring. He is completely caught off guard and can't take his eyes off of her jiggling cushions. Shio and Akari jump in between them and offer to teach her instead. But Runako ignores them like expired milk and sits on top of Sakai. She then bluntly expresses her love for him, but the clueless idiot simply thanks her as if she's complimenting him. All of a sudden, Runako leans forward and everyone thinks she's going for a kiss, but it turns out she's just fallen asleep on top of Sakai. He then grabs her like a loving brother and takes her to her room, while the other girls simply stare in confusion. They decide to stay by her bed to watch over her, but are shocked when they hear Runako moaning Sakai's name in her sleep. Shio starts to worry that Runako and Sakai might end up dating soon, while Akari keeps trying to convince herself that Runako's confession was nothing more than sisterly love. Sakai, on the other hand, is banging his head against the wall like a maniac, trying to control his emotions for Runako. The next morning, she wakes Sakai up by getting on top of him and even makes a delicious breakfast, claiming she's practicing to be a trophy wife. Sakai absolutely loves it and praises her cooking skills, which makes her jump in excitement. Her massive juggernauts bounce so hard that they cause a mini earthquake inside the house. Later, Sakai is brushing his teeth while assuring himself that Runako's just a little sister and nothing more. He promises to refrain from having dirty thoughts, but then she suddenly hugs him from behind and demands to go on a date with him. That afternoon, Sakai hesitantly takes her to a park where she runs around and plays in the water. He thinks to himself that she's just a kid by nature, but Runako proves him wrong by expressing her desire to drink his yogurt. Just then, a random kid gets hurt, so Runako jumps into action to help him. Sakai realizes that she's a good person by nature and wants to become a doctor. He starts feeling bad for treating her like a child and wonders if her confession about loving him was actually serious. Just as he's about to process his feelings, Shio and Akari crash the date, and Akari immediately starts yapping at him, not to have creepy thoughts about the younger girl. The girls eventually ditch him to play together, leaving him to watch from the sidelines like a bullied student. He soon finds himself staring at Runako, with intense passion until she calls his name, snapping him out of his filthy daydream. A few days later, Akari starts playing detective and stalks Sakai to a shop, dying to know if he's actually into the new girl. When he catches her being a creep, she panics and pretends she's just there for bread. Sakai tries to warn her that the loaf she grabbed is basically a biohazard of spice and will mess her up real bad. He reveals that he once tried just one bite during school and felt like someone poured sulfuric acid in his mouth. The other students who tasted it were glued to the toilet for hours, and some even passed out of pain. Akari is terrified upon hearing this, but she knows that if she backs out, Sakai will become certain that she was stalking him. Desperate to prove him wrong, she ignores his warning and ends up purchasing it. She later takes a bite in class and her mouth is instantly on fire, prompting Sakai to come to her aid. He offers to get milk for her and tells her to throw the rest of the bread away, but the stubborn girl insists on finishing it all. Akari then takes another bite, then another, and ends up finishing it fully. When she finally comes to her senses, she realizes she's been death-gripping Sakai's hand like a python, which makes her cheeks turn red. Akari then proceeds to finally confess her undying love for him, but chickens out at the last moment as usual. She still tries to act cool, but soon falls unconscious from the intense heat. Summer break is around the corner, and while Shio and Akari are hyped, Sakai is a total downer because he's drowning in feelings for the three of them. When he gets home, it only gets worse as Runako flexes her perfect exam scores, making Sakai feel like a low-tier NPC. She asks for a hug to celebrate her success, but he ignores her and immediately locks himself inside his room. He decides to go into monk mode and put his romantic thoughts on hold for the time being, as the upcoming exams are extremely important to him. For 3 straight days, Sakai stays locked in his room, studying nonstop like his life depends on passing those exams. The girls, meanwhile, have camped just outside his room with food and drinks like they're having a picnic. Seeing the other two worried, Akari tells them that they should just go on a vacation without Akari. She pretends that she doesn't care, but folds the second Runako asks if she'll miss him. Since Sakai won't open the door, the girls climb through the window and try to cheer him up with some goofy dolls, but he's having none of it. Akari gets all worked up and starts roasting his grades, but this time, Sakai stands up for himself and tells her to shut her trap. The girls then try reverse psychology, claiming that summer vacation is useless anyway, and that he should study hard. But the loser ends up taking it literally and becomes even more motivated to ace his exams. However, his willpower instantly vaporizes the moment he sees the girls jiggling and twerking in their skimpy swimsuits. They once again ask if he'd like to join them at the beach, and a hypnotized Sakai has no choice but to agree. As they browse summer beaches, Sakai shows the girls his results, which turns out to be not so bad. He then asks about their scores and is stunned to find out that Shio has actually failed one subject. Feeling a bit less pathetic, Sakai smugly tells them that they should be joining him for study sessions during the holidays. Later, he's chilling in the bath, dreaming about a summer full of curvy girls when he hears them heading for the bathroom. Sakai panics and hides under the tub cover as it turns out they've decided to have a sleepover with Runako instead of going home. He's barely able to breathe as the girls uncloth themselves and start comparing their bazookas and pancakes. At one point, he gets a 4K view of someone's rainforest, causing his sausage to almost pierce the tub cover, but he somehow wrestles it to the ground. Runako suddenly says she wishes Sakai were a girl so he could join them, and while they're laughing, the tub cover starts sliding away. This almost blows his cover, but Sakai manages to ninja roll it back into place in the nick of time. Just when the nightmare seems to be over, Runako decides to hop into the tub because the room is too cramped. Sakai is now squeezed into a corner for dear life, and he almost gets busted when Shio tries to join her in the water as well. But Runako saves him by asking the girls if they think Sakai is catching feelings for them. They both play it off as no big deal, calling him just a friend, with Akari insisting she doesn't want him looking at her that way. But Runako drops a bomb, admitting she'd be thrilled if he liked her. After thinking about it for a while, Shio finally admits it would make her happy too, but Akari stays headstrong and refuses to fold. Once they leave, Sakai crawls out of his hole and quickly puts his clothes back on. He's drying his hair with a towel when the cheeky Runako suddenly walks back in, catching him completely off guard. He tries to explain, but she reveals that she knew he was there the whole time. She even teases him about a mole she spotted on his body and tells him to keep this a secret or else they'll get into trouble. The idiot later wonders if this summer break will finally help him achieve his rom-com fantasies. When break finally starts, Sakai and Shio head to the library to do some studying before they head to the beach. Sakai tries to focus, but it's nearly impossible while sitting next to Shio, as he keeps getting distracted by her levitating cushions. He also starts reminiscing the bathroom scene, where the girls confess that they would love if Sakai had feelings for them. By the end of the day, he's mentally fried while Shio is ecstatic and full of energy. She leans close to him to show him her work, but ends up rubbing her cannons all over his arms. Seeing how comfortable she is around him, Sakai assumes she views him as a disgusting loser, and wonders if she'd freak out if she knew about his dirty thoughts. He then teases her about canceling the beach trip because she's pathetic at studies, making her slightly annoyed. She instead hints that she wants him all to herself, but the loser is too dense to get it, and tells her that they'll always be close friends. With tears in her eyes, Shio asks if he'll still be close to her if he falls in love with someone else, and he assures her that he will. But then, she suddenly asks how he'd feel if she asked him out on a date, making him speechless. The next day, Sakai and the girls head to the beach, but he tries his best to avoid them like the plague. He's terrified that if he stares too hard through their skimpy costumes, his sausage might discharge on the spot. The girls, especially Shio and Runako, try their best to get him involved in their games, but he keeps ignoring them. The loser spends most of his time digging sand and collecting shells like a weirdo, which annoys the hell out of them. Meanwhile, Akari watches from the sidelines with jealousy as Shio and Runako shake him like a coconut tree. She desperately wants to join in and mess with him as well, but her stuck-up attitude won't allow her to do so. The constant jiggling of their melons makes Sakai lose his mind, and he eventually shouts at them to cut it out. He reminds himself that they're just his childhood friends, so he should act like a celibate monk around them. Sakai also remembers the stupid question Shio had asked him the other day, which makes him tremble like he's having a seizure. To make the situation even sweatier, Shio lays down on the ground and begs him to rub sunscreen on her. The loser expectedly refuses, but Runako flips the situation by lifting his shirt and applying sunscreen on his back instead. The two girls then forcibly try to drag him into the water, while rubbing their bazookas on him for extra friction. Seeing all this, Akari gets even more jealous, but can do nothing more than just hover around nearby like a glitching video game character. Sakai tries to keep his cool by remembering the exact moment his feelings for them shifted from platonic to thirsty. Ever since that change, he has been training his mind to resist their temptations. But all that mental practice is currently getting incinerated by the pressure of the moment. Akari finally finds the guts to ask him to play volleyball with her, but his constipated expression makes her snap, and she starts scolding him in a fit of rage. In her frustration, she accidentally shoves Sakai into the ocean, which finally breaks his resolve because the girls look so incredibly cute. All three of them assemble like the Avengers and pull him out of the water, but the freak stares at their curvy bodies for so long that he ends up getting a nosebleed. The girls then spend the rest of the day treating him like royalty. They feed him, smother him with their assets, and even bathe him. But the loser still thinks it's a punishment. On the way home, Sakai is made to carry all the heavy bags like a donkey. And Akari's constant yapping makes him even more furious. He lashes out at her, and while the two get into a shouting match, their bus takes off with Shio and Runako passed out in their seats, totally unaware their friends were left behind. This mess makes Akari even more of a prickly brat than usual, which fully convinces Sakai that she does not like him even a little bit. With no buses coming until the morning, the two decide to walk to the next town, and Akari secretly thinks about how this is her chance to be alone with him. She wants to use the time to make a move like the other girls, and possibly gulp down his gravy. Just then, a cheeky black cat pops out of nowhere, startling the life out of her. She clutches Sakai tightly, but quickly lets go and claims he was the one trying to feel her up. By the time it gets dark, they are still bickering like crazy, competing to see who is actually the bravest, but even the sounds of crows cawing makes her tremble in here, completely ruining her tough girl persona. She tries to grab his hand for comfort, like she used to during her childhood days, but is too scared of doing that. All of a sudden, Sakai sneezes like a shotgun going off, which scares her so badly that she falls to the ground, and she refuses when he offers a hand. Akari tries to stand up on her own, but she falls again as her legs give out from cramps caused by exhaustion. With no options left, Sakai hauls her on his back like a sack of potatoes and starts performing late-night cardio. He mentions that she used to be a lot sweeter in the past, which only makes her even more angrier. She reminds him that he was the one who started acting like a douche first, but Sakai admits he was only acting so stern because he was focused on keeping her safe. An hour later, they finally reach a nearby town, and their phone picks up a signal through which Sakai calls his worried family to let them know they are alive. After the call, he tells Akari that his mom has already booked them into a local hotel for the night. Akari stays completely silent for the rest of the walk, which makes Sakai assume she's mad at him for God knows what reason. To make matters worse, he learns that his mom was on a budget and only booked one shabby room for the two of them. He wants to get a second room, but she suddenly grabs him from behind and says she wants to stay with him. The dumb idiot still doesn't realize that Akari is spreading her legs wide open for him and just assumes she's terrified of ghosts. However, she thanks him for being her protector and explains that his behavior reminds her of how he used to care for her back in the day which leaves him utterly speechless. While he's in the bath later, Sakai overthinks over why Akari is acting so weird. Normally, she would have roasted him into a crisp by now, but her sudden soft side has completely thrown him off balance. He even starts to fear she might be plotting something evil against him. When he gets out and finds her waiting for him patiently like a devoted wife, his suspicions only get worse. During dinner, Sakai acts all jolly and tries to share his food with her, but she remains completely indifferent, showing no emotions at all. Realizing it's impossible to read her mind, Sakai starts fidgeting with his food until he ends up pouring hot tea all over his hand. To his surprise, a worried Akari rushes over and starts acting like a total sweetheart. She tells him to go cool it off in the sink and even offers to clean up his mess. The whole situation has Sakai's brain spinning like a Beyblade because she has never been this kind to him. When it's finally time to go to sleep, the loser moves his mattress as far away as possible so he doesn't risk falling into one of his stupid rom-com fantasies. He then wishes her a good night, and Akari turns off the lights to call it a day. But seconds later, she crawls right next to him and holds him tight, begging him to let her stay. Sakai starts vibrating with pure shock, while she urges him to bring back things the way they were before they drifted apart. She expects him to scold her, but he suddenly pulls her into a hug and promises to do exactly that. Now that she's filled with extreme hormones, Akari finally musters up her courage and tells Sakai that she loves him. She then drifts to sleep, leaving him wondering if she actually confessed or if his imagination is just playing tricks on him again. Following day, Sakai is lying on the couch like a quadriplegic, still thinking about Akari's confession. One hand, he desperately wishes it was true so he can bonk her, but his brain refuses to accept it because she immediately went back to being a mutt the moment they left the hotel. Runako's arrival soon snaps him back to reality as she starts shaking him to spend more time with her. But the foolish dork ignores her. A frustrated Runako mutters that he should try to understand a girl's heart, and this finally piques his interest, so he begs her to tell him more. Meanwhile, Akari still can't bring herself to accept what she said the night before. In full denial mode, she's actually waiting outside Sakai's window with a baseball bat, planning to erase his memory of the hotel incident the hard way. She quietly peeks inside, only to hear Sakai asking Runako for advice about exactly what happened between him and a friend at the hotel. He tries to stay vague, carefully framing it like he's asking for his friend, but Akari starts vibrating like a cucumber toy. The more he talks, the more she fears Runako might piece everything together and realize the friend in question is actually her. After hearing the full story, Runako tells him that the girl must absolutely hate the boy she spent the night with. That immediately crushes Sakai's fragile hope of going under the sheets with Akari, while she is also unhappy with that conclusion because it doesn't reflect her real feelings at all. Sakai initially accepts Runako's judgment, but then he casually adds that the girl has always looked at his friend like she hates him. That changes everything. Runako suddenly flips her entire analysis and excitedly declares that the girl is obviously in love. She claims that some girls treat the person they like garbage, and confidently advises him to tell his friend that being persistent with such a girl will make her fall in no time. This new interpretation shocks both Sakai and Akari at the same time. Then Runako goes even further, suggesting that Sakai's friend might already be into the girl as well. After a brief hesitation, Sakai agrees with her, which flusters Akari so badly that she ends up losing her balance on the roof. Hearing her screams, Akari looks outside the window and is shocked to see her with a freaking metal bat. He asks if she was trying to rob his house, but she instantly snaps back at him in her usual rude manner. Just as she tries to retreat from there like a feral cat, she slips and falls. Thankfully, she only falls in slow motion, which gives the freak enough time to jump out the window and catch her. Sakai then embraces her tightly and asks if she's fine, but instead of being grateful, Akari pushes him away and calls him an ugly loser before storming off. Meanwhile, Runako watches everything unfold and finally realizes that the entire story Sakai was talking about was actually about him and Akari. She gets so jealous that when Sakai tries to continue the conversation, she completely ignores him and walks off. Later on, Akari is at the mall, listening to a loud, overly cheerful advertisement about a fireworks festival. It claims couples who exchange saliva under the yearly display are guaranteed eternal romance. She tries her best to ignore it, but the commercial is so persuasive that she decides to try on one of the romance luck products being promoted, convinced it might somehow fix her situation with Sakai. But before she can act on it, Shio and Runako suddenly arrive out of nowhere and startle her. Akari quickly tries to steer them away from the screen, acting casual, but Runako ends up noticing the ad anyway. She then openly admits that she wants to try the fireworks legend with Sakai, and possibly make him eat her oranges, which leaves both Akari and Shio's mouth gaping. Later, while the three are shopping for traditional outfits, Akari stares at Shio and has flashbacks of all the moments when Sakai has been close to her. This makes her realize that Shio also has feelings for him, devastating her. Things get more tense when Akari notices a pair of hairpins in the store display, but before she can even reach them, Shio grabs them first. Being the gentle girl that she is, Shio awkwardly offers one to Akari and suggests they wear matching ones instead. Akari agrees, sending her into another flashback of how they've been sharing stuff ever since they were kids. But it also makes her sad as they now have to compromise on the one person whose sausage they desperately want to eat. A little later, when Akari and Shio are left alone, Shio drops another bomb. She says she plans to watch the fireworks with Sakai alone this year instead of their usual group outing. On top of that, she openly admits she believes in the festival legend and wants to try the saliva exchange under fireworks idea with him. Akari is clearly shaken, but she forces herself to act normal and tells Shio to go ahead. However, Shio isn't fooled at all and calls her out on it. After some pressure, Akari finally drops the act and admits she also has feelings for Sakai and wants to watch the fireworks with him too. With everything finally out in the open, Akari and Shio shake hands, agreeing to compete fairly for Sakai's natural white sauce. That night, Akari and Shio head out to the festival with Sakai, who's dressed like a homeless person. The girls are anxious and still unsure how to ask him out for the fireworks event. It turns out Shio had climbed into his room this morning to confess, but she became so nervous that she started mumbling like Kanye West. While she's still stuck in that memory, Sakai suddenly grabs her hand, leaving her flustered in the middle of the street. She then decides to finally ask him out, but the clueless idiot can't hear a thing in the crowd and urges her to keep walking. Akari then tries her turn, but instead of a smooth confession, she ends up shouting at him like a drunk father. After the situation calms down, Akari and Shio talk it through and decide they will both try to speak to Sakai properly before the fireworks begin. But when the moment finally arrives, neither of them wants to go first. They're too afraid to talk to him and keep on passing the responsibility back and forth like high school kids. Just then, Sakai interrupts them with some greasy snacks and forces them through every stall they pass through. His sudden excited tone makes both girls suspicious, and they cannot tell what's wrong with him. What they do not realize is that Sakai is also mentally overwhelmed. He's trying to cope with their strange behavior, so he resorts to stress eating his way through the stalls just to avoid thinking about it. At one point, he almost chokes on some noodles, but the girls perform a weak Heimlich maneuver and save the day. Soon, it is announced that the fireworks are about to begin, so Shio quickly tries to ask Sakai to watch them together. But her words end up being gibberish, and he assumes she's having a seizure. Akari also tries to say something, but the idiot starts walking away, assuming they want to enjoy the festival without him. Both girls suddenly grab his hand and finally ask to watch the fireworks together, leaving him completely stunned. After the girls run off, Sakai nearly short-circuits from the emotional overload. His mind drifts back to simpler years when he could just watch fireworks with his childhood friends without any weird romantic pressure. He walks through the festival like a zombie, not knowing if they're serious or just messing with him. Suddenly, he sees Akari screaming near a tree and goes toward her. Akari, meanwhile, is overthinking how she's supposed to act around Sakai without embarrassing herself. Trying to prepare for the fireworks legend, she practices kissing an ugly mask, completely unaware that Sakai is quietly watching the entire performance from a distance. When Akari turns around and finally sees him, she screams so loudly it almost bursts his eardrums. She even starts throwing stones at him for catching her in such a compromising moment, but Sakai dodges them and manages to calm her down. When he notices the mask in her hand, he realizes that she was practicing for the fireworks kiss legend. Before he can process it further, he overhears a bunch of nearby girls talking about the same festival rumor. This finally confirms that Akari and Shio had not just randomly wanted to watch the fireworks alone, they were both thinking about that legend. Embarrassed and unable to face him any longer, Akari bolts away from there while Sakai chasing after her. But the locals think he's a predator going after a girl, so they pin him down to the ground. They almost distort his face until Akari lets out a piercing scream and clears the misunderstanding. Afterward, both of them awkwardly apologize for the chaos, and Akari firmly tells him that he needs to choose between her and Shio. While she doesn't say it directly, she clearly implies that she's ready to confess if he chooses her. Before Sakai can even respond, he gets a call from Shio, revealing that she cannot meet him and urging him to go watch the fireworks with Akari instead. It turns out that after separating from them, Shio had been waiting anxiously for the fireworks to begin. To distract herself, she ended up helping a random pregnant woman to reach the hospital. By the time she finished, the festival timing had almost passed. She tried to rush back toward the venue, but her slipper ended up breaking, leaving her stuck near the hospital. This is why she reluctantly called Sakai to inform him that she won't be coming. Knowing that he'd get restless, she also didn't inform him about her real situation. Shio is clearly jealous that Akari might get to nail Sakai under the fireworks, while she's stuck here with a stupid broken slipper. Shortly after, the husband of the woman she helped earlier arrives at the hospital, and thanks her properly for assisting his wife. He politely asks if she has any plans with someone, and Shio immediately thinks about the plans she made with Sakai and Akari. She tries to act normal, but the emotions she has been holding back start to spill over. Unable to keep it inside any longer, she suddenly runs off barefoot, determined to reach Sakai before the fireworks end and confess what she feels. But fate has other plans as the fireworks burst right before her eyes, prompting her to collapse in the middle of the street and start crying. Just when all hope seems lost, she hears Sakai's annoying voice and turns around to find him out of breath like an asthmatic patient. Akari also arrives and hugs her tightly. As it turns out, both of them ditched their plans and immediately started looking for her. An emotional Shio apologizes for ruining their chance to enjoy the fireworks properly. But instead of letting it end there, they both pull her along and decide to have a small fireworks show together. While they sit and watch the pathetic display, Shio quietly asks how they even found her. Akari explains that after receiving Shio's call, Sakai immediately ran off to search for her, despite having absolutely no sense of direction. Akari followed him, and the two of them wandered around aimlessly until an elderly woman stopped them. The woman recognized Akari and Shio's matching hairpins and told them about Shio helping her earlier, then directed them toward the hospital area. Sakai and Akari both praise Shio for stopping everything to help a stranger without hesitation, which makes her feel a bit better. Sakai then reassures her that they can always watch them properly next year as long as they are all together. After comforting her, the group decides to set off one final firework themselves. It ends up being much smaller and underwhelming like his sausage, but it still makes them happy. Shio excitedly thanks them for turning this night into something she will never forget. She then has a private conversation with Akari where she apologizes for ruining her chance to confess to Sakai, but Akari immediately shuts that down, telling her to stop being a sissy who overthinks everything. She then declares that she plans to compete fairly for the chance to win Sakai's trouser snake, and Shio agrees without hesitation. As they're busy chatting, they notice that Sakai has fallen asleep on a nearby bench. The girls realize this is their best chance, so they lightly kiss him on both cheeks without his consent. Sakai wakes up instantly, certain they did something to him. He starts chasing them for answers, but the girls simply giggle and hope that he can fill them up with his biological cream soon. A few days later, Runako takes Sakai out for lunch, but the loser is still thinking about that night with Shio and Akari. He had genuinely hoped the fireworks festival would kickstart his dream of getting under the sheets with them, but now both the girls have been unusually quiet. When Runako arrives, she casually asks about the festival, and Sakai admits that his chances of having any real love life is basically non-existent. Runako reassures him that things will naturally pick up, and proceeds to feed him some ice cream like he's a toddler. She even confesses that spending time with him already feels like living inside a rom-com, making him blush uncontrollably. After she leaves to get the remaining order, a thick girl suddenly appears on her bicycle and flaunts her juicy pancakes. Sakai is hypnotized by her curves, but then she drives off from there, leaving him confused. The next day, on his way to school, Sakai runs into the same girl again. This time, she openly teases him about his so-called harem, and even rubs her ginormous melons against his face. When Akari and Shio rush over to stop her, the girl tightly embraces them, saying it feels good to reunite after such a long time. She then drives off without saying another word, leaving everyone confused about who she actually is. Not long after, the rumor about Sakai having a harem spreads through the school like wildfire. A group of jealous simps confront him in class, begging him to save some girls for them. Later, a confused Sakai meets up with his friends, and Shio reveals that the girl they met earlier is Haru, a seasoned athlete who's quite popular among single boys. She's also the one who has been spreading the fake rumor regarding them. A furious Sakai decides to confront her, and goes to her classroom, only to be told she's in the club room instead. When he walks in, he nearly faints as she's casually changing clothes with the door unlocked. A moment later, Haru calls him in, and the clumsy idiot immediately trips and falls right on top of her cushions. He quickly apologizes, but Haru just laughs it off and tells him to stop acting like a stranger. However, when she notices how distant he is acting, she realizes he does not actually recognize her. Before he can react, she grabs his face and pulls him closer, trying to confirm his reaction. Outside the room, Shio and Akari are waiting anxiously and decide to step in before Sakai somehow ends up collecting another girl. As they open the door, they're shocked to see him on top of her, despite having just met a few hours ago. Sakai explains that this isn't just some random girl. She's actually Haru from their elementary school. However, Shio and Akari are genuinely shocked, because the Haru they remember from childhood was supposed to be a boy. It turns out she had short hair and a deep voice which made everyone think she was a boy. Not knowing what to do, Sakai tries to quietly distance himself from her, but Haru clearly has no intention of letting him escape, and continues clinging to him. Shio and Akari are not about to let some newly revealed childhood friend suddenly take over Sakai's attention, so they drag her away from him. After things settle slightly, they question Haru about the spreading rumors. Haru calmly admits she is the one behind them and promises to fix everything. When she jokingly asks if they are all in some kind of harem, Sakai, Shio, and Akari instantly deny it in sync. But Haru doesn't seem fully convinced because the three of them are always together like a group of swingers. Later, Haru invites Sakai to meet her at their old spot, and specifically tells him not to bring the other girls. He pretends to hesitate, but deep down he's absolutely starving to drink her melon juice. While waiting at the basketball court, Sakai starts overthinking everything and briefly convinces himself that this might be the start of some fantasy rom-com. Just then, Haru gives him a jump scare, almost jibing him a heart attack. She then starts fiddling with her buttons, which makes him rock solid in his pants. But then she immediately crushes his hopes by challenging him to a one-on-one basketball game instead. Sakai confidently accepts, but the moment the game begins, he's on the back foot. She distracts him using her own basketballs and ends up winning the match quite easily. Sakai's pride is so hurt that he insists on a rematch just to recover his dignity. During the second game, the pace slows a little and Sakai finally manages to ask her why she suddenly disappeared from their lives back then. Haruz apologizes and explains that her life became unexpectedly busy, which is why she lost contact with them. For a brief moment, they fall into a nostalgic rhythm recalling their childhood days. Haru uses that distraction to score a point, leaving him frustrated. When she goes for the same trick again, Sakai imagines her as boy, Haru from their childhood days, and tackles her to the ground. Although she still wins the match, he manages to get on top of her, which is arguably the bigger win. After the game, they immediately start arguing about a punishment for the loser. Haru refuses anything physical like head flicks, and instead demands that he answer her questions honestly. She then brings up what she heard about the fireworks festival, specifically the situation involving him, Akari, and Shio. Sakai insists that nothing happened between them, but Haru reminds him of their childhood bond and says that he can be honest with her without worrying. Even after all that emotional pressure, Sakai still refuses to give a clear answer, so a frustrated challenges him again. Instead of basketball this time, Hiru suggests they play a stupid game from their past, in which the participant with the ugliest face expression wins. During the game, they make several disgusting faces, and Haru keeps teasing him about his multiplayer situation until he finally cracks under the pressure. He admits that he does have feelings for his friends, even if he does not understand what those feelings fully mean yet. Sakai also admits he does not know how Shio and Akari feel about him, so an excited Haru decides that she'll help him find out their feelings for him. Sakai tries to stop her from poking her fat nose into his affairs, but she quickly runs off, leaving him annoyed. Later, Haru calls Shio and Akari for a girls' picnic, but then bluntly asks what they think about Sakai, leaving both of them stunned. Before the situation can escalate further, Sakai closes her mouth and drags her outside as if he's kidnapping her. He sternly warns her to stay out his romantic problems before she makes everything worse. When they return, Shio cautiously asks what they were talking about outside, but Sakai brushes it off with a pathetic excuse and silently looks at Haru for backup. She casually starts reminiscing about their childhood, only to blurt out that they once engaged in a tongue fight. Sakai instantly panics and lunges forward to stop her from continuing, but it is already too late. He tries to explain that it was only an accident, but Haru keeps elaborating in a way that somehow makes the situation sound even worse. Just when the tension becomes unbearable, Runako arrives and unintentionally breaks the atmosphere, giving Sakai a brief moment of relief. Haru excitedly goes to hug her, but Runako panics and runs away, clearly traumatized from something in their childhood. It turns out Haru used to scare her with frogs, and the little girl still has nightmares about it. Haru tries to apologize while chasing after her, but Runako refuses to let her get close. During the chaos, Haru slips and falls on top of Sakai, accidentally exchanging saliva with him. Shio, Akari, and Runako are left speechless while Sakai's face distorts in embarrassment. That night, he rolls in bed, still replaying everything that happened. He wonders why the girls didn't even react or shout when he had that accidental kiss with Haru. On the other hand, Shio and Akari are curled up in their rooms, devastated that a new girl has managed to taste Sakai before them. They're also worried that Haru might be a serious new rival in their pursuit of Sakai. The next day, Shio goes out for a run, hoping to clear her head after everything that has been piling up. But even that doesn't go smoothly as she ends up tripping for no reason. Just when it feels like her day cannot get worse, Haru shows up and helps her up. Trying to regain some control over her emotions, Shio invites Haru to run with her. While jogging, she suddenly asks if Haru likes Sakai. Haru instantly denies it and flips the question back at her, accusing her of being the one with feelings for him. Shio also dismisses the idea, but it is obvious neither of them is being honest. What starts as a calm morning jog quickly turns into a full-blown jiggling competition. The two begin arguing over who has done what first with Sakai, turning the run into a marathon. Eventually, both of them collapse to the ground from exhaustion, but are still unwilling to admit the truth about their feelings. Frustrated and physically drained, Shio drags herself home like a zombie. She runs into Sakai at the entrance and he tries to support her, but she loses her balance and they end up having an accidental saliva exchange. Both of them are shocked by what just happened, and she immediately runs away to avoid any confrontation. For the rest of the day, Sakai cannot focus on anything. His mind keeps replaying the kiss over and over again, and his sausage has also evolved to become much bigger. A few days later, he heads to school feeling anxious about facing Shio, especially since she has been acting unusually quiet since that incident. His thoughts spiral as he overthinks every possible meaning behind her actions. But when Shio finally appears, she acts normal and casually pulls him into the classroom like nothing ever happened. This sends the loser simps into a fit of jealousy, and they start bombarding him with several questions and accusations. After that, Shio avoids him for the rest of the day like rotten eggs, which only makes things worse for him. After school, Runako and Haru spot Sakai sitting alone like a bullied student and decide to mess with him for fun. But as they get closer, they notice he is carefully reading an article dedicated to kissing, instantly raising alarms. The girls immediately corner him and demand an explanation about what's going on. Sakai tries to come up with a limp excuse as usual, but Runako suspects he must be researching the topic because of the kiss with Haru. After a little more persuasion from the girls, Sakai mentions that it's about Shio, but realizing his slip-up, he quickly lies that he's trying to help a friend who was kissed by a girl and ignored later. Haru clearly informs him that a girl only kisses someone she's interested in, and advises him to just boldly pin the girl against a wall and return the kiss. But Runako objects, explaining that doing that might land someone in jail. Since their views differ, Runako and Haru begin to argue about it until Sakai stops them. Suddenly, Runako bluntly asks him if he likes Shio, but Sakai denies it, earning him a scolding from both girls. Sakai considers whether he has any true feelings for his childhood friends, and overwhelmed by the whole situation, he blurts out that he isn't sure. Frustrated by his cowardice, Haru calls him a loser, and storms off with Runako. The following day, Sakai continues to spiral in class, and when the teacher requests representatives to handle the upcoming sports day, Shio volunteers to help. Sakai also volunteers to work with her to find a chance to talk about the kissing incident. Later, while organizing the sports equipment, Sakai tries to muster some courage to talk with Shio, but he's unable to. Unbeknownst to him, Shio is also having a hard time focusing because of the awkward tension between them. In fact, she has been spiraling like him since the day she kissed him. Even the day she met him outside the classroom, Shio had needed all her courage just to act normal in front of Sakai. But his usual constipated look almost made her run away on the spot. After overthinking it, she decides to test the waters in the most awkward way possible. She acts out a painfully cringy kissing scene using potato sacks as props. But the buffoon, who's oblivious as always, actually plays along without questioning anything. After a few minutes of secondhand embarrassment, Sakai suddenly shuts it down and tells her to get back to work like nothing happened. Shio tries once more to bring up what she really wants to say, but doesn't muster up the courage to do so. The two then continue working in awkward silence as neither know how to restart the conversation. Eventually, Sakai remembers Runako's advice about being more honest and decides to push himself. He finally asks Shio if she wants to talk about what happened, but she gets so flustered that she almost wets herself. Just then, Sakai notices a heavy box starting to tip over near them. He instinctively rushes to stop it, but ends up falling on top of her sweaty body once again. After the incident, both of them revert back to their normal lives as they're certain they'll never be able to bring up that topic. A few days later, Sakai is sitting outside like a loser, overthinking about how quiet things have become between him and Shio ever since their accidental kiss. Just then, Haru comes charging at him in her bicycle and drags him away like a dirty rat. Elsewhere, Akari corners Shio and demands to know what really happened between her and Sakai. Shio immediately tries to escape the conversation, but Akari grabs her hand to stop her. This causes Shio to start crying, and Akari finally realizes that she's in a lot of pain. Misreading the situation, Akari assumes Shio is upset because she must have seen the accidental kiss between Sakai and Haru. She tries to comfort her, but Shio completely misunderstands and thinks Akari is referring to the kiss between her and Sakai instead. Akari then admits that she was also shaken after seeing Sakai and Haru together, which only deepens the confusion. She then suddenly hugs Shio and concludes that Sakai must have rejected her after their moment. She criticizes him, saying he should have been more gentle, but Shio misinterprets that her kiss with him should have been gentler. Despite all the crossed wires, Shio is left wondering why Akari is being so kind to her when they both have feelings for the same person. Akari shouts that no matter what happens, they are still childhood friends and need to support each other. The two bimbos then hug each other, completely unaware that they were discussing a different version of events. Elsewhere, Haru has dragged Sakai to a baseball practice net, saying it will help him blow off steam, but the loser fails to hit even a single ball. This annoys Haru, and she bluntly comments that he's only acting like this because Shio rejected him. Sakai immediately denies it and tries to explain, but Haru is having none of his BS. She even tells him that his lack of nuts will lead to every girl eventually rejecting him. That comment hits a nerve, and Sakai starts swinging wildly out of frustration but still misses every shot. Haru seems to be enjoying the sight and continues to mock him for being a chicken. Sakai becomes so nervous that he ends up falling to the ground, prompting Haru to remind him that if he keeps hesitating like this, all of his childhood friends will slowly drift away from him. Scared that the baddies will leave him, Sakai finally grows a pair and declares that he'll never let that happen. He then hits a perfect swing, striking the ball so hard that it crashes against the batting cage. Even Haru is impressed, despite that fact that it took over 500 balls to touch one. At the same time, Shio opens up to Akari, admitting that she no longer knows how to talk to Sakai properly and is scared they might drift apart. But Akari gently taps her back and reminds her of all the past arguments and makeups she's had with Sakai, reassuring her that their childhood bond is not something that breaks like china glass. This riles up Shio, and she decides to talk things over with Sakai, but accidentally mentions the kiss between them before rushing off. A shocked Akari finally realizes that she and Shio had been talking about completely different incidents, leaving her frustrated. Meanwhile, Sakai thanks Haru for helping him earlier and says he's going to talk to Shio as well. Before leaving, he pulls out an ugly toy and hands it to her, surprising her as she realizes he still remembers her childhood hobby. Sakai responds that it's because she's one of his precious friends, which leaves Haru so flustered that she almost drips gravy down there. Just then, Shio calls him and asks to meet, but the call suddenly cuts off mid-conversation. This sends him into panic mode, and he starts fearing the worst possible scenarios. He then immediately decides to look for her, and Haru selflessly lets him take her bicycle. Sakai rushes back to school, but Shio is nowhere to be found. He checks several familiar spots, then even goes to her house, but still finds nothing. Just as he starts to lose hope, Shio suddenly appears out of his bedroom window. She reveals that her phone actually fell and got damaged while rushing down the stairs, and she was too foolish to borrow someone else's phone. As Sakai breathes a sigh of relief, she decides to come down through the window, but ends up losing her balance. He rushes to catch her, but her melons are so heavy that she takes him down, resulting in yet another accidental spit swap. Instead of going to his bedroom to finish the job, the two losers are so overwhelmed that they decide to stay just friends. Later that night, Sakai can't stop thinking about Haru's words, especially the warning that he might end up drifting away from his childhood friends if things stay this unclear. His ding-dong is also disappointed that he didn't let it out earlier. The next day, at the sports event, Shio is in a good mood now that she's finally cleared the air between herself and Sakai. Akari, however, is annoyed that she's the only one who still hasn't experienced the accidental kiss with Sakai. The 100-meter race soon begins, and Shio uses her massive airbags to create a thermodynamic advantage. She ends up winning the race as well as the hearts of several ugly simps on the sidelines. After the games, Shio instinctively runs towards Sakai and clings to him like a blood-sucking leech. But when he turns around and shows his weird face, she realizes something is off. This Sakai is now overly enthusiastic, cringy, and sparkly like he just had his hormones removed. Disgusted by his new appearance, Shio immediately calls for an emergency meeting with the others and tells them everything. Haru and Akari go to see him and almost puke, thinking he has been hypnotized by a witch, while Runako thinks he simply looks like someone who has had a heavy burden lifted off his shoulders. Just then, Sakai walks over and cheerfully suggests they all take a group photo together. The girls reluctantly agree and take a picture with constipated expressions, but then Akari shouts that his creepy behavior is making her skin crawl. Sakai responds that she looks cute when angry and leans close to her, but Haru pulls him back and slaps him repeatedly. Her shock therapy doesn't work, but it does give him a slightly more battered face. The only one who's indifferent to him is Runako, who announces that she likes this version of him. She then steps forward and hugs him, followed by Shio and Haruko. Akari hesitates for a while, but not wanting to be left out again, she joins them too. They remain in this position for a while, each reminiscing about their romantic time with Sakai. But just when it seems the group is about to have a group activity, Sakai gets up and announces that snuggle time is over. He goes on to say that since they're all just childhood friends, turning things into a romantic rom-com would feel weird. That line alone is enough to freeze all four girls on the spot, but Sakai somehow makes it worse by throwing in a random wink like an absolute weirdo. Later, the field event begins, and Sakai is paired up with Akari in the three-legged race. He ties her shoelaces like a gentleman, but she is irritated by his strange SpongeBob voice and keeps shouting at him. He casually promises to do anything she asks, prompting her to briefly consider asking for a kiss, but then she shuts that thought down. Right before the race starts, Sakai grabs her shoulder and makes her hold onto his waist as well, turning her cheeks red. The two then start running in perfect sync, and even take an early lead, but it doesn't last long as others overtake them one after another. Despite this, Sakai stays relaxed, and tells her to take it easy, which completely clashes with the version of him Akari remembers. Thinking back to how competitive he used to be, she refuses to accept this strange, laid-back attitude. Out of nowhere, she burst forward like she drank Superman's biological chemical, dragging Sakai along with her. He has a hard time keeping up, so an annoyed Akari reminds him how confident and driven he used to be. Then, in the middle of all that chaos, she blurts out that she likes him. Sakai barely has any time to react as she suddenly trips, sending both of them crashing into yet another seemingly accidental kiss. But this time, Akari reacts instantly and blocks his mouth with her hand, refusing to play tonsil hockey with this embarrassing version of him. As the crowd gasps in shock, the two quickly get up and finish the race together, only to end up in the last place. After the race, the girls rush over to check on Akari, especially since it looked like she took a nasty fall, but she insists that she's fine. Sakai shows up again in his overly cheerful mood and invites everyone to go get lunch, but none of them want to eat with this loser, so they reject him. An embarrassed Sakai then heads to the bathroom and washes his face. He finally drops the stupid act, letting out a deep sigh of relief now that he is alone and no longer forcing himself to keep that persona going. But the peace doesn't last long, as his naughty side starts floating in the air as an alter ego and begins roasting him. This version, which looks like a human tadpole, and it warns Sakai that if he keeps having bad thoughts about his childhood friends, he might end up losing them for good. It even displays the same thoughts which Sakai used to have every night to creature moisture in his pants. The lecture is enough to shake the loser, and he's even more unsure about how to handle everything. Just then, Runako suddenly appears and hugs him from behind, completely catching him off guard. She quickly notices that he has gone back to acting like his usual self, and invites him to join her for lunch. Runako takes him to the rooftop where no one is around and starts feeding him spring rolls from her hand. This almost raises his flagpole, but his alter ego once again pops up and reminds him that she's younger than him. The cunning girl leans in closer to him in a bent-over position and starts talking in a soft voice as if she's in heat. She even joins head with him to check his temperature, which overwhelms him so much that he blurts out that he's been having naughty thoughts about her. He realizes his mistake and quickly tries to explain, but the weird girl says it actually makes her happy to know he has such thoughts about her. Later, as the final event begins, Sakai steps up for the obstacle race, and the girls are thrilled to notice that he has finally ditched his weird persona. He runs like Captain America and easily takes the lead, all while reflecting on everything that has been happening between him and his childhood friends. At the final obstacle, he stops to pick a note, but his mouth is left wide open as it turns out he now has to choose a girl he loves and continue the race with her. Not wanting to overthink it, Sakai immediately grabs the youngest girl, Runako, leaving the other three disappointed. But soon he's reminded of the earlier rooftop lunch where Runako accepted his embarrassing confession and reminded him that childhood friends stay together regardless of complicated feelings. That moment sticks with him, and instead of continuing with just one person, he suddenly turns back and grabs Shio, Akari, and even Haru, who's in the rival team. With all four girls in tow like they're his starter Pokemon, Sakai pushes forward while quietly reminiscing on all the memories they've shared. He realizes that no matter how complicated his feelings are, they all deserve to be valued. After crossing the finish line, the confused referee stops him and asks if he loves all four girls. Sakai shouts that he has no idea, but they're all precious to him because they're his childhood friends. Surprisingly, the referee accepts the answer and declares him the winner, bringing the weird competition to an end. Sakai thanks the girls for helping him win, making them furious as they realize he only did all this to achieve first position. Haru is also annoyed as she accidentally helped a rival win instead of her own side. In the middle of all this, Sakai's tadpole ego pops up and looks on him like a proud dad. Since Sakai has finally managed to control his feelings, he wishes him good luck and fades away. The next day, things return to normal as Sakai wakes up to find Shio and Runako snuggling beside him. They even cling to him on the way to school like personal escorts while Akari follows behind in her usual cold attitude. Soon after, they run into Haru, who pretends their meeting is just a coincidence, but it's clear she wants to desperately stroke his javelin. She then accuses Sakai of secretly enjoying all the attention, but he firmly denies it and insists he does not have any impure thoughts anymore. The girls are disgusted by his answer and end up running away from there, while the loser realizes that no matter what he does, he can never be in a rom-com with his childhood friends. If you watch this anime recap until the end, comment down harem. If you like anime recaps like this, watch this video.